Hey YouTube, Common Collector here, and today I'm bringing you guys an update to my Diva Hero Edison deck profile. This is just a very exciting video for me because I've been working on this deck for weeks now. It has been a few days or weeks since I've uploaded, but I've just sort of been hammering this deck profile out, along with a handful of others, so there are a lot more coming down the pipe. If you guys do enjoy this profile, please make sure that you guys subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. You guys possibly saw my previous deck profile for Diva Heroes. I believe I did it like in the spring last year. And I only tweaked around like with a few cards, but I do have a side deck now, so I am going to try to do a side deck with all of my at least my more competitive Edison deck profiles. You know, if I profile something like less good, you know, maybe like Chain Burn or something like that, then I'll maybe not do a side deck. But for this, I do have a side deck prepared, and I do want to just discuss over the cards that I swapped around. So for context, I wanted to increase the consistency of the deck. For a while, I was actually thinking of playing Upstart Goblins, but just sort of like due to a little bit of testing and stuff, you know, this is a bit of an OTK deck, and Upstart Goblin does sort of still slow down your OTK a little bit, but it does help get you to your bomb cards, which was what I was hoping to do. I just want to get to those like bomb cards like Future Fusion, Dad, all of that kind of stuff, even Miracle Fusion. So in order to like sort of increase the consistency and just sort of like feed through the deck a little faster, I took out Spirit Reaper and the Phoenix Wing Wind Blast and added in E-Emergency Call and Elemental Hero Ocean. And I absolutely love this swap. You know, these cards, like, they're good. They do help the deck. Like, this helps stall. This helps get stuff into your graveyard. But you can always make Brionic if you need to get stuff into the grave. And just, like, you know, summoning monsters, tributing them off to get them into the grave. Overall, just adding these cards was really, really great. And it even came up, like, several times in testing to where I had already gotten, like, Malicious into the graveyard and I didn't want to get anything else in grave. Activated Future Fusion. And I was able to send Ocean instead of like sending a Stratos or a the Prodigy. So definitely like having Ocean in here. And then when you see E-Emergency Call and you haven't seen Stratos yet, this just feels amazing. Like you just feel like you're like a next level duelist. So we will probably talk a little bit more about those as we go through the profile. But we are playing the one copy of Stratos. This card, you still got to play it in the deck. It's just amazing. Sometimes it doesn't feel as good because it is limited in Edison format. So, like, if this card was at, like, even 2, it would just feel even more incredible. But really cool plays that you can do that just, like, people don't talk enough about is the fact that you play Different Dimension Reincarnation. Is that the right one? Return from the Different Dimension is like the big trap card that you play. So being able to, you know, you banish this card eventually with Miracle Fusion, and then you bring it back. And as long as you have like a couple guys on the field, because you already activated Miracle Fusion, so you might already have an Absolute Zero on the field and maybe like a Prodigy. And then when you summon this card back, then that's when you can get like a really big pop on your opponent's spells and traps because you actually have heroes on the field. Otherwise, when you're like summoning this guy, you're probably just going to be adding a hero. But yeah, that Different Dimension Reincarnation of Return from the Different Dimension effect. Oh my God, there's so many cards that bring stuff back from the banishment. But yeah, Stratos, just amazing for the deck. Again, we do have our Ocean to play. This card, it doesn't really get its effect off too often, where you're going to be adding back in the standby phase, because we don't really play that many battle traps and stuff. So this guy can still get hit by Bottomless. It can still get hit by your opponent's battle traps, or your opponent can just run this over. But when it's in the deck, it does still feel just amazing because you activate Future Fusion. And again, if you've already used up your Malicious, you can just send this. Or if you've already used up your Treeborn Frog and you have like a hero and this to send, this counts as your water. So it's a water, it's a warrior, it's a hero. It does quite a bit for the deck. It's kind of almost like your, it's almost like your own version of like Small World. It bridges for the deck. So it is pretty incredible. Like when you start playing it, like it sounds bad when you start talking about it in theory, but when you start playing this card, I guarantee that you'll start liking it. We are playing our 2 copies of Prodigy. Honestly, I kind of thought about bumping this up to 3 just because like I always want to be going in for big synchro plays, tributing for Caius, all that kind of stuff. But still 2 copies gets it done. 2 copies of Malicious. I'll try to speed it up now a little bit now that I'm done with my rant with Ocean. We have our 3 copies of Deep Sea Diva. This card is just incredible when you see it. Like, you know that you're going to be making some plays, especially if you have your graveyard set up. And then we do have the 1 copy of Spine Gilman, obviously. We do have our 3 copies of Caius. This was the 3rd card when I was considering playing the Upstart Goblin route. Like, if you guys are curious about Upstart Goblin in Diva Hero, again, I don't recommend it. I tried it, I tested it, and it felt really cool at first, and then, like, there were times where I was like, oh, maybe this isn't as good. But yeah, Upstart Goblin, I was considering taking out those 2 cards, the Spirit Reaper, the Phoenix Wind Blast, and then the 3rd Caius. But then I was just thinking, I'm just like, you know what? Caius is just too important to the deck. So when I realized that, I was like, okay, there's nothing else to take out for Upstart Goblin. And then I just worked my way back there, and that was how Ocean kind of landed his way into the deck. We have our 1 copy of Dad. And our 1 copy, oh, that's 2 cards. Our 1 copy of Gores. These cards still just help with the deck so much. Gores is just really good in here because you don't really set a lot of stuff up on your field. The only thing that sort of hurts like your Gores and your Treeborn Frog is your Future Fusion. But once that's off the field, then these 2 cards are live. So we are playing the Treeborn Frog for the lower level stuff. 1 copy of Dark Refer just to get some stuff moving, and he's an extra warrior target for your Rhoda. So you kind of got to play him just so that you have an extra target. We are playing the 1 copy of Plague Spreader Zombie and the 1 Sangan. Getting on into the spells for the hero stuff, we are playing our 3 copies of Miracle Fusion. This card, never play it any less, because when you see this card off the top of your deck, it feels like you're about to just like start making a big push. So this card is absolutely incredible. 1 copy of Future Fusion. Future Fusion also just, when you see this card, it just feels amazing because you're going to dump your Treeborn Frog. You're going to probably dump a Malicious. And then our 1 copy of Emergency Call. Like I said, an extra way to search for Stratos. And if you've already seen Stratos, then you probably haven't seen Ocean. And I mean, if you draw into both of them, you can always just discard this off of Brionic. It's not the best game plan, but it's kind of what you just got to do. But it does add that bit of consistency that this deck really needs. If you ask anybody like why Diva Hero struggles against like the other top tier decks, it's because of the inconsistency, which was why I was testing around with some other means of drawing and stuff. But yeah, this just seems to be the best way to kind of just get to the stuff that you need. We are playing our 2 copies of Gold Sarcophagus. Never don't play the 2 copies. Like, you always need to be playing these. And it feels a little bit weird. You Gold Sark for Future Fusion, and then like you finally, after 2 turns, you get Future Fusion in your hand, activate that, and then you're like, okay, cool, now in 2 turns I get that Fusion monster. But it's still better than nothing. It's better than never seeing Future Fusion, and like, even if you get Malicious into the grave on, it would be, what, your 3rd turn? Like, it's still what you usually need to do to make that push. And you're probably never going to see that Fusion monster anyway off of Future Fusion, but that's fine. You're just getting that 2-card Foolish Burial, and it's good enough to usually squeak the win. We do have our 1 copy of Rhoda, 1 copy of Allure of Darkness, just for more consistency cards. Then we are playing the Heavy and the MST, just for some back row removal. We are then playing Mind Control and Brain Control. These cards are just insane to be able to play together. This is like the one deck that can really take advantage of Mind Control. It's just really great because you always can tribute for Caius if you go with Brain Control, or if you go with Mind Control, you can always do stuff like, you know, you can do your synchro plays, all that kind of stuff. And it does come up playing like the Gaia in the extra deck, and then you draw Miracle Fusion, Mind Control, and Miracle Fusion. If your opponent, it came up in testing, like one of my last games, my opponent had Card Trooper on the field. I just mind controlled it, and then instead of destroying it and letting them draw a card, I just went into the Gaia and then just pounded into their face for 2,200 damage, and that felt really good. It just lets you avoid draws like that. It lets you work around Goyo Guardian, because Goyo Guardian is just such a horrible card to be on the other side of the table against. So you mind control your opponent's Gaia, or your opponent's Goyo, and then you Miracle Fusion into a Gaia. It just feels so good. Then getting on into the traps, we are playing our 2 copies of Bottomless Trap Hole, 1 copy of Torrential, 1 copy of Mirror Force, 1 Deep Prison. You only really just have space for the 1. But if you guys have ever seen a True Heroes videos, he always just sort of says you play like one of each of the power trap cards, just to sort of make your opponent always stay on their toes. They just never know. They're like, okay, like, is that a D prison? Is that a bottomless, which we play 2 bottomless? Is that torrential? You know, what is it? Then we're playing the 1 copy of Solemn Judgment, 1 copy of Trap Death Shoot, and then 1 Return from the Different Dimension. Just an absolute perfect 40 cards. I really wouldn't change much up anymore. I'm obviously going to keep fiddling and testing with the deck, but I really like where it's at right now. Getting on into the extra deck, I believe there was 1 card that also changed here. We are playing our 3 copies of Absolute Zero, my absolute favorite extra deck monster of the deck. Just absolutely love this guy. He's just so good. 1 copy of Gaia. Like, there are people who say don't play Gaia, a True Hero included, I believe, but I just really, really like this card. It comes up, like, you go into your Goyo Guardian quite often, so you're probably going to have an Earth in your graveyard, and like I said, you can always, like, try to steal your opponent's stuff, or post sideboard, you're probably playing, like, Fossil Dyna and stuff like that, so you're probably going to be able to still go into this guy. 1 copy of the Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon, talking about our side decking. 1 copy of Armory Arm, going in order for the 4s to the 9. We have Ally of Justice Catastor, 1 Brionic, which really helps you for pitching cards out of your hand. 1 copy of Goyo Guardian. You know, again, it's an Earth, and it just is an amazing card. One of the strongest extra deck monsters in the format. 1 copy of Black Rose Dragon, 1 Stardust, 1 Colossal Fighter. That way we can actually enable our Armory Arm OTK, which is just really cool. For those of you guys who don't know how Armory Arm OTK works, you have your Prodigy, you special Prodigy from your hand if you control no monsters. Normal summon Diva. Diva gets you another Diva, and then you use Malicious to special the other Malicious from your graveyard. You go into Armory Arm with your materials and Colossal Fighter with your other materials. Equip Armory Arm to your opponent's monster, and then as long as the math works out, you just keep going Colossal Fighter into that monster and OTK your opponent. It's honestly just a really cool play. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, oh my gosh, my blood pressure just gets pumping. Like, I just get so excited when I see the line. We have Thought Ruler Archfiend, 1 copy of Dark End Dragon, and I believe a new card in the extra deck is Mistworm. I figured the fact that we are playing that Brain Control and Mind Control, you want to have level variations, and we also have Treeborn Frog to modulate our levels. So if you're about to go for an 8, and then you go, oh shoot, I have Treeborn Frog in grave, and bring that back in your standby phase, and then boom, now I can go for a 9 and go into Mistworm, and Mistworm can just go for such big pushes. Going through the side deck really, really quickly. This could always change up a little bit. I'm definitely not the best at side decking for Edison format, but these are the 15 that I am currently running with. We have our 2 copies of Cyber Dragon for our Chimera Tech card. We then have our 2 copies of Snowman Eater. This is for like the Blackwing matchup, or just anything where like battle phase and all that stuff is really relevant and you just need some removal, or if you're playing up against like a deck that just can't get over 1900 defense, it does come up quite a bit. Then we have our 1 copy of Vanity's Fiend, 1 copy of the Fossil Dyna, 1 copy of DD Crow, 1 Nobleman of Crossout just for like the big back row decks. Really cool theory that I heard of. I'm not sure who, like the pro player or whoever it was, but looking at a deck profile, somebody had said if you play Nobleman of Crossout and Mind Control, you really usually only need to side in like 1 of each. It's maybe a little bit overkill if you go like 2 Nobleman and 1 Mind Control. But the fact that you have both of these options, it means that you can either steal or just remove whatever your opponent has. And in this deck, you know, we still like a little bit of graveyard setup. So mind controlling your opponent's like Ryko that's set and flipping it and stuff is just still just amazing. For the mirror match, and just like because Hero Frogs is a big deck, and there's other frog like water decks out there and whatnot, I am playing 2 copies of Super Poly. This card just seems like it's a blowout against some of those matchups. So, you know, maybe it's not your toughest matchup, but it is a free matchup basically if you are playing this card and they are not. Then sort of like another DD Crow that I'm playing is 1 copy of the Transmigration Prophecy. One thing that I really like about this card specifically is that it lets you get 2 cards from either graveyard and then shuffle them into the owner's decks. So the fact that this card, 1, for if you're playing up against like Blackwing or Vayu Turbo, it's not going to banish the card where they can just bring it back from the banishment. Or again, if you're playing up against a Diva hero and they can just return from the different dimension, all that kind of stuff. You know, you don't really want to give them that graveyard or banishment setup, so you can just shuffle everything back. This card is just objectively better. Again, it kind of messes up with your Treeborn Frog, but I think it's still great. And then the relevant thing also is that this card lets you shuffle from either graveyard. So if you're thinking, you're like, oh man, like, I can shuffle back, you know, my malicious and then different, you know, return from the different dimension and get my other malicious back in the graveyard or something like that. Like those are sort of like niche plays and stuff, but it's still definitely relevant. If there is like a combo piece, or even if you want to just shuffle back another Diva hero or your Spined Gilman, like this card can do stuff for your deck and ruin your opponent's deck. So you could do one of each. Like if your opponent's about to go for something, Pot of Avarice, you can shuffle back one of their cards and then shuffle back one of your Deep Sea Divas, and boom, like look at that, you just got like another great resource back. Going forward, then we have 2 copies of Dust Tornado in case we go up against any big Floodgate decks. I just always have Spell Trap removal in my side. If you go up against a big stun deck and you don't have Spell Trap removal, you're just caught with your pants down and it just feels bad. And then for the last 2 cards, we have our 2 copies of Deck Devastation Virus for the matchups where it really matters. I mean, we can easily go into Catastor and Caius and all that stuff, so we always have our options here. So definitely want to play 2 copies of this. But anyways, guys, that is going to do it for the deck profile. I know this one was a little bit longer for like, you know, sort of like a standard Edison list, but this is a deck that I've been labbing pretty hardcore, just trying to get it to the optimal build. And I genuinely think that this is like the best way to play. Again, you can sort of mess up with the side deck a little bit. If you guys have any suggestions, obviously leave them in the comments section down below. And let me know what other deck profiles you guys want to see for Edison, GOAT format, or anything else. And we will see you guys for the next profile. Peace.